Are you ready? Stand by.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Hartman, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Three Gun Show. This is episode 236 with Aaron Hayes and Ben Hayes of Hayes Custom Guns, an Austin area builder of fine custom pistols. And we continue the series that I've been doing for a while now on the 2011 pistol. So before we get into the interview, I have a couple things I want to tell you about. In episode 230 with Jeff Cramblett, we were talking about 1,000 pounds of Picatinny rail, and I was wondering out loud how much pick rail that actually is. Well, the Three Gun Show patrons came through. So Joe Easter says 1,000 pounds of 6061 is about 2,500 feet of Picatinny, and then he told me to go away and leave limited division alone. And then several days later, James Thornburg says 1,000 pounds of pick rail is 3,362, so 3,362 feet, and he had the 3D model that he had done up and calculated to prove it. So, lessons here, the patrons are awesome, and that Jeff would have had a freaking garage full of pick rail. The second thing is that I announced last week that I'm going to be doing a media project with the Texas Three Gun Championship for their match that's at the end of March. The Texas Three Gun Championship it's becoming a cornerstone match in the three-gun world. It signals the start of the major match season here in Texas, and I'm excited to be working with them. So they still have a few slots left in the match as of this recording, so if you're interested, you should definitely sign up and come say hey when you're there. There'll be a link in the show notes at threegunshow.com/236, or just search and practice score for Texas Three-Gun Championship. But don't delay. It's nearly sold out, and it's not going to be something that you can sit around and hope to catch in the last minute. So on to the show here. Hayes Custom Guns. I went up to visit Ben and Aaron to continue the series that I've been doing on the 2011 pistol. And because they're listeners of the show, they clear up some misconceptions in this episode on the platform. And they argue some points that were made on previous installments and kind of, give some clarifications. And we talk about their pistols, custom pistols in general. And my favorite part of the show, they also run down the history of custom pistols in the U.S. and tell us about their long family tradition that started with Jim Clark Sr. and Clark Custom Guns. It's a really cool story. So this is a fun one. Buckle in and enjoy this interview with Aaron Hayes and Ben Hayes of Hayes Custom Guns. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
I'm happy to have you guys. So, Aaron, you've been on the show a couple times before. Ben, I think this is like your first podcast.
Yeah, first
on the
one
Three Gun Show
to listen to also.
First one you got to listen to? Oh, you haven't? Oh, nice.
No, I'm kidding.
You go to the Aaron Hayes School of Podcast Listening too?
Yeah, yeah.
It's only something you're on that you're going to listen to.
That's right.
Well, so let's set the stage. So, we're at Hayes Custom Guns, Liberty Hill,
Texas. Two words,
Liberty Hill, Texas, if you want to look it up. And
you'd be surprised how often you have to specify that.
Is that right?
Yeah. Like when people, giving them our address or whatever for shipping or just whatever. Yeah. You would think you'd have to specify that, but
I do that with Round Rock. Why would Liberty Hill be one word?
I don't know.
All right, then. Anyway,
but I always say that now just to make sure. So
it's our first tangent of the day. So, Hayes Custom Guns, Ben Hayes, Aaron Hayes. I'm guessing that's where you guys got the name from.
Yep, you nailed it.
All right, I'm good at this. Let's give folks who may not be familiar with Hayes Custom Guns, maybe outside the three gun space, an idea of what Hayes Custom Guns does, like in a brief overview here.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it kind of runs in the family, working on guns and hitting things with hammers. But basically, when we started off, we didn't really intend to be as big into three gun as we've become, but we started shooting three gun, and our shop really kind of morphed into a really specific three gun, or at least a majority of our work focusing on three gun and how to make guns better for 3-gun. So it wasn't our intention. We like building single stacks just as much as 2011s or double stacks. But it was quite it's a really specific niche, but it's a really popular niche.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting to think like the 3-gun is so much smaller than USPSA, but you guys are able to have like a shop and a whole living providing for your families based on that one small little niche.
Yeah, there's upside and downside to that.
Oh, I'm sure.
The downside is if 3-gun went away, what are you going to do? So
bowling pin matches, Ben.
Yeah. Always looking to expand into other areas when it makes sense. But yeah, 3-gun right now is pretty hot, and I don't see it slowing down any in the future. So.
So when you said it's kind of runs in the family, what do you mean by that? So I know what you mean by that, but tell everybody else.
Well, my grandfather, when he got out of the Marines after World War II, he started tinkering with his pistols and started kicking butt. And so he opened up Clark Custom Guns in 1950. And then...
So correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I think I know, that's like one of the original 1911 custom shops?
Yeah, it is. It's the original in a lot of ways. My grandfather and uncles and aunts really innovated 1911s in a lot of ways. The ramp barrel was a Clark original. Heck, things even like the bull barrel in 1022 was Clark original. They were doing things like what we call sight blocks.
Yeah.
Nowadays, those were bowling pin guns back in the day, 60s or 70s. So quite a few innovative ideas came out of that shop way back in the day. And then I didn't start working there until 2008 it was, I believe, and then Aaron was working there before I was. So, yeah, that's...
Building pistols?
Sweeping floors. That's where I started. So I'm not
Ben,
sure.
This is a really important job. We trust you with this broom.
Aaron and I never actually worked together at Clark's. He worked there through college, I believe. I'm not sure when you stopped.
Yeah, I was there for probably 5 years. So I left after I graduated college and moved to Texas, and then it was a couple of years later that Ben started working there. And so yeah, it would have been cool if we'd have gotten to, but it was it's kind of unique. When I was there, one of the original gunsmiths named Archie was kind of getting towards the end of his career. So a lot of the jobs that he would have to get out of his chair to do is what I did. So I did a lot of machining work. I did a lot of part prep. He did all the slide to frame fits, all the trigger jobs, all the super detail finish work that goes on in a custom pistol. He did all of that because he didn't have to get up from his bench. So I kind of filled in
that's
the
really
stuff he didn't want to do.
Really interesting point because it depends on who was kind of your mentor when you were learning gunsmithing as to kind of what techniques and styles you used. For example, if you had someone that not necessarily didn't want to get up out of their chair, but a lot of those old school guys, I forget how long Archie worked there, but 45 years or something crazy. Rather than getting up and setting up a machine to make one little cut, well, they were skilled enough they just do it by hand. So
they just file it out.
Yeah, file. You need a little notch here rather than machining it out. If you've got the skill and precision, you just cut it in there by hand with either a file or a Dremel. And so that's kind of how I learned. And coming into our own shop here, it's kind of that's one of the deciding factors on how we do things. Well, should this be done by hand or by a machine? Because a lot of guys like the old school techniques. To know that their gun is built a certain way by hand. The less machining, the better. But on the other hand, you got to get product out. So
yeah, it's true. And there's got to be like a fine balance between them too.
Yeah.
Because like with like a file and a block of aluminum, you can do a whole lot of damage. You can build almost anything. But it's not necessarily the most efficient way of doing it.
And there's something can be done better by a machine, like checkering, right? Front strap checkering on a 1911.
Which was another Clark original.
Yeah, my uncle,
really?
Yep.
My uncle and grandpa designed and basically built from scratch, from a modified machine.
The horizontal
machine,
mill.
horizontal milling machine that checkers the front strap perfectly. I mean, perfect.
Really?
Yeah.
They got offered some big money a couple of times by some pretty big 1911 manufacturers for that machine back in the day, and they said no.
No kidding.
Build your own.
But a lot of people,
that's
something that a lot of people like to pay for is hand checkering, on the front strap of their gun, and it's really a skill but there's no way it's going to match machine checkering. And there's a few other jigs now you can get for vertical mills that will accomplish basically the same thing. But
when you say there's no way it's going to match, do you mean like as far as like symmetry?
I'm talking about perfectly straight lines.
Okay.
Perfect points.
Right.
It's not possible to do that by hand.
Right.
You can't stay that straight. You can't get the points like that with a
Right.
checkering file.
But to like Ben's point, it's like maybe there's someone out there that like I want to see the
for
kind
sure.
of the scuff marks, or maybe it's not quite so equal, so it's done by hand.
Right.
Yeah, it's and you might be easier to understand when you look at a knife forge.
Mhm.
Well, you can look at a hand forged knife and know that that's hand done by hand. All this engraving is done by hand, but it's not as pretty, it's not as straight, it's not as perfect, but that's what people want.
Yeah.
So it's cool coming from some gunsmiths who had the capability and skill to do all this stuff by hand and kind of learn those techniques and always have that in your back pocket because it really helps being able to file straight and flat is very difficult.
Oh yeah.
And most people can't. So
Right.
it's
like a very German way of learning machining. So I'm the reason I say that is I'm reminded of when I worked at Lockheed Martin. We had people that we would affectionately call button pushers. Someone else would load the program in the NC and they'd just go bing,
That's it, yeah.
and they were machinists, right? And then we had like journeyman machinists, like people that had been doing this longer than I've been alive, and they would be touching the machine to like, oh, it's getting a little hot right now, we're gonna have to move this around, that sort of thing. And then they'd think like, oh yeah, I just need to take a few 10,000ths off of this, so I'm going to use a file. And I'm thinking like, well, dude, we got to put this on a spacecraft. You're going to use a file for that? He's like, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, all right. And then sure enough, man, you go over to the CMM and like they just freaking nailed it. But like there's one dude that could do that in the whole time that I was there. Like everybody else, competent, different levels of competency, but even the most competent machinists could not do that. Like this gentleman I'm thinking of is super classically trained in that, and it's definitely like a skill that does not come easy.
Yeah, and if you want to learn how to work with your hands like that, you're gonna have to put 10 years in to do it.
Yeah.
Like it's not something someone can walk in the door and you teach them how to fit a barrel by hand.
Right. It starts with sweeping the floor.
Yes,
I understand.
It takes time, and then you graduate to taking the trash out and all those other fun chores.
Sandblasting 500 1022 hammers in July in an outdoor sanding booth. I did that
in
a few
Louisiana?
times. In Louisiana, yeah.
Nice.
Picking up brass.
Yeah.
Man, there's piles and piles of brass out back. Actually, one of the best jobs I ever had as far as paying wise, my grandfather would pay me 2 cents a piece of brass that I picked up.
Really?
Yeah, and then so I had about 5-gallon buckets, and then we were going to weigh it and do the conversion, figure out how much it was worth. Well, the guys at the shop figured they'd have some fun, as they usually did. So I walk in, and I'm like probably 9 or 10 years old, really happy to be working, to make some money. I walk in, here's my buckets, and then I think that's probably Jerry or Jim or somebody's, wait, what's that? What's that down on that brass? So they started digging. And somebody had slipped in a bunch of rocks and lead weights and put in the bottom of my buckets. And my grandfather walked up and was like, what the hell? And I'm like, beat red, like, I don't know what to do. Because I'm not in on the practical jokes yet, at 9 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh.
Well, jokes
no.
don't make sense. The world doesn't make sense at
It
9.
wasn't me. It wasn't me.
They were savage. Savage.
Picking on Ben.
Yeah.
9 years old. Oh, man.
It just got worse from there.
I llove that story. That's awesome.
So
So was your grandfather in on the joke too?
No. I think it was actually Tommy Joe, I think it was my second cousin. He did a lot of the revolvers for Clark's. He liked to play jokes on me. So it was probably Tommy and Jim were usually working together, and it was probably them too.
That's awesome. I love it. So let's so thank you for sharing those stories. I think that's really cool to see where people came from, and over the years knowing you guys, I've heard a little bit about these stories here and there, and I think it's cool to share it with the audience to know like where you guys are coming from. So when you started Hayes Custom Guns, what was like the idea there? Just like we need a Texas branch?
I mean, I was here in Austin, and Ben was moving to Texas. I don't remember what part of Texas because of his wife's job.
It was kind of I had a brief stint in the oil field on a drilling rig, and then I worked for Halliburton for a while. But with gunsmithing, unless you're the owner, it's hard to make enough money to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was actually had to give up gunsmithing, and I went to the oil field because I had a couple kids on the way. So my wife's like, "You got to get a better job." So did that, and then in the oil field, we had I was working 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So I had 2 weeks off at a time, and Aaron was here in Austin, pretty flexible hours. So we're like, "Man, we want to do guns. So what are we gonna do? I got all this free time, so let's open a shop." So
That was right about the time I started shooting also.
Mm-hmm.
So Clark's is primarily focused on single stacks, and of course back in the day when my grandpa was shooting, bullseye was all the rage. So super accurate guns. A lot of times they would even cycle them by hand. Like the guns wouldn't even cycle; they were so tight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they would shoot 38 special with wad cutter bullets, and hand cycle the guns a lot of the time.
And side note there, yeah, the guns.
It's almost like a bolt action gun.
The guns that they were building back then were so different than what we use now for 3-gun or USPSA. The triggers were made out of steel instead of aluminum, and so if you did a really light trigger job, which the bullseye guys like light trigger jobs, if you dropped the slide, that steel trigger would cause what's called trigger bounce, basically where the whole gun moves forward and the steel trigger stays stationary, so it pulls the trigger. You get hammer fall. So they would have to push sideways on the trigger and drop the slide, and that's how they would prepare to fire. But it was a known thing. But now you get all these old-time bullseye guys who've passed away. Now their kids and grandkids have these pistols that they've inherited, and they would send them in and be like, hey,
let's go load it.
Yeah, let's go. Or this gun's broken. We get them back in and be like, no, that's just the way they were because there was no aluminum triggers.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would just have to know to push on this trigger sideways to keep it from bouncing when you drop the slide. Of course, now, once the aluminum trigger came out, that pretty much ended that. But yeah, if you get an old bullseye gun, they are not like not like what we're shooting
They're
today.
not user-friendly at all.
Don't load it in your bedroom.
Well, it would fall to half cock, hopefully. So it wouldn't fire, but it would fall to half cock.
Okay.
And yeah,
I gotcha.
If everything is working properly.
And when you started that story in my mind, I'm just thinking like wild 80s, that's what all those holes in the benches at public ranges are from.
There were a few holes in Clark's gun shop.
There's a few.
My grandpa was
This one's too light.
notorious.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, yeah, you gotta pay attention.
Yeah, I think his tool chest had like 3 holes in it, at least 2 on his workbench. So don't work to the left of him. That was kind of a rule of thumb.
I like that. Put a brick wall next to him.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
But yeah, so that was right about the time I started shooting. Kind of independent of us having a shop, I was like, hey, I'm going to start shooting 3-gun. This looks like fun. And there's a real active scene here in Austin. So they just kind of both merged together organically. Yeah,
and like I said, we weren't intending to get into 3-gun, but as Aaron started shooting more 3-gun, we were like, hey, this is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
We still do build single stacks, and I love single stacks, but just the double stacks are really popular, and that's primarily what we're competing in. So
yeah. I remember you telling me about, starting work at Clark and them having like the, 1911 heritage and everything. And Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had a customer that wanted to get a 1911 pistol from you guys because he had one from Clark Custom Guns. Is that right?
Yeah, and that was actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like there's certain guys that like to shoot their guns and other guys that like the history and the craftsmanship and that type of thing. So that was pretty cool to know that somebody out there has the original Clark and then they want one of ours to continue the line. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty slick. And until you told me that story, I'd only associated like you guys with action shooting, 2011s, and I had no clue that you'd build 1911s as well. So that was pretty interesting to learn from like a consumer perspective. Like, oh, there's more there than meets the eye.
Yeah, and that was a really cool pistol. That was actually one of our first customers. He called and he said, "I've got a gun that your grandpa built, and I have a gun that your uncle built, and I want one that y'all built." So we built. I'm pretty sure I think it was a stainless steel 45, and it shot some really good groups.
So
in
I
testing.
guess. If one of my kids grows up to be a gunsmith, I've already got an order placed for
there
it.
There you go.
You've got one already ordered.
You got your first customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So then, okay, 3-gun came along in your life. You're like, oh, let's start building pistols for that. And now when I come in, there's just a ton of shotguns in here being modified, Rock Island 1911 pistols, and Ben, you're always the first to grab a tub and show me something cool. And so you've got double stack 2011 pistols. Most of the ones I see are 3-gun limited / tac ops, but you guys do open division pistols as well. You're starting to do some slide rides and everything. Mm-hmm. So what? You said 2013, so 6 years. In the 6 years, what are we looking at as trends flowing? What was the trend in 2013? What were you primarily building, and what are you guys outfitting now most often?
I mean, I don't know that I'm necessarily qualified to comment on what trends were when I started shooting because I was new. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have a first-hand perspective of the last few years like I do now. I know the sight trackers we started building almost right away, and that was I know Infinity had been doing that for a while. My dog is a killer.
Yep.
Hey, come here. So
he's keeping us safe from all the CrossFitters running outside.
Exactly. So, and that was when Schumann barrels were actually still available. So we built a decent amount of our guns with Schumann barrels in the old days there, and the old days, 6 years ago, back in the old days. Yeah. So those have been popular, pretty much since we started building. Ryan Muller, I think, has the first sight tracker that we built, and
this one that we've got in front of us here, sight tracker.
It's got an island barrel with the front sights mounted on, so. It's pretty popular. We find that we can get them to cycle pretty light ammo, reducing weight out of the slide like that. Since there's no power factor floor and 3-gun.
It's funny that you mentioned the term trend, though, because...
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this, and I'm kind of leading you into it, because you remember when I was here last time, we were talking about the island barrels versus the, what is it called, sight block?
Sight block, yep.
And then just happened to walk in the door.
Yeah. So that's right. I was just telling Aaron about that. I think he missed that guy. But we have... very interesting customers here, and a guy just happened to bring in an old, what would be considered a bowling pin style pistol, which is basically a sight block. Bowling pin matches, basically, if you're not familiar with that style of matches, where you go set, say, 10 bowling pins up on a table. I'm not sure what the specifications are now, but basically there's a table with bowling pins on it, and you shoot until the bowling pins are all off the table and on the ground. Mm-hmm. Of course, they had different classes. But they started mounting basically what is now called a sight block on a barrel. And then they developed to a full profile, which is when it went the full length of the depth of the slide. Mm-hmm. And then they started porting it in the top to making it a compensated sight block. So yeah, that, and I'm not sure when that was came to be, but I know it's back in the 70s. But
yeah,
it took that trend a while to come back.
Yeah. So you and I were talking about the difference between like an island barrel, a normal, what we would consider like a normal sighted barrel, and then the sight block. And I was asking you what the benefits were, and it was trippy because we just got done with this conversation. The dude walks in, and what was the so he had a 1911, right? So 45 ACP. What was the length on that? It seemed like
5-inch gun and probably an inch long or maybe a little longer
on the
comp
on the.
Or not, wasn't comped because it wasn't ported. It was just a block.
On a block.
Yeah.
And so for someone who may not really be familiar with 2011s, when we say sight block, what are you talking about?
It's where you add a longer barrel that's threaded, and you thread on just a piece of steel, and you mount the front sight directly on that instead of the slide.
So when the slide reciprocates, the sight stays in the same place.
Yeah, roughly. It goes up and down a little bit with the barrel lockup, but very minimal. But yeah, it doesn't go back and forth with the slide, and it adds weight to the barrel, adds weight to the nose of the gun. So you can change the way a gun feels quite a bit by adding weight or subtracting weight. Yeah, so it's a lot of people may not be able to tell the difference.
I'm one of those people, by the way. People hand me 3 different guns. I'm like, it's cool, dude.
Yeah,
works.
You really there's a lot of subtleties that if you don't shoot a lot, and to really kind of sum it up, when someone says, "Well, do I want a sight tracker? Or do I want a sight block?" Sight trackers, the barrels themselves are quite expensive, and there's a lot more machining that goes into it. So they're
because
really expensive.
You're talking about for people listening at home, sight tracker is what we have. So if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can check it out on the YouTube, and I'll take some pictures too. But this is a sight tracker, right?
Correct.
So we have what appears to be like an island sitting on top of the barrel, and then a recess cut in the slide where the slide reciprocates around the barrel. Right.
Yep.
So it's kind of the same concept we were talking about, except for the sight is actually on the barrel instead of a block on the extension, right?
Correct. Yep. And when people are trying to decide whether they want, they see the sight tracker and think that's awesome. I want one.
It looks badass.
Yeah. And then you tell them the price, and they're like, do I? And then they
How about for no sights?
Yeah. But what really when competitors or competitive shooters or people who are just getting into it, they see it and they want it. Like, is that going to be the difference? Is that going to?
Am I going to be able to see my sights during the recoil?
Is it going to?
That's what I want to know.
Bump me up 10 places. I tell them, if you know you want the sight tracker, get the sight tracker. But if you're on the fence, you probably you don't need it.
Yeah.
And that's just from a cost perspective. If you're not sure that you want it, it's a lot of extra money for something that you're on the fence about, and I don't want to talk you into it.
Right.
But if you know you want it, it's bougie, and get it. So you'll be happy with it. But as far as being able to tell the difference, if you're a shooter who puts a lot of rounds downrange in the year, you'll probably be able to tell the differences. And I don't have a whole lot of time behind bowling pin guns or sight blocks, nearly as much as I do sight trackers and bull barrels. A good experienced shooter might be able to tell the difference and balance between a sight block and a sight tracker, because a sight tracker or island barrel, it has the weight further back.
Okay.
Whereas the sight block or bowling pin comp is all on the end. And it wouldn't surprise me if someone could tell the difference between the two in the way they cycle and the way they're balanced. But for the average shooter, they're not going to be able to tell the difference between a bull barrel, sight tracker, sight block, as far as the weight and the recoil feels.
Mm-hmm. So this gun that we're looking at here, this is a 5.4 or is this a 5.5?
Yep, this is a 5.4.
5.4. Okay.
Yep.
So for example, on a sight block gun, so if you're looking for like an overall length of 5 inches or 5.4 inches, then that means you can subtract the block from that, right? And so now you have like a really small or really short slide compared to the overall length of the actual gun.
Are you referring to cutting the slide off and then replacing it with the block?
I don't know. I don't know how it's done.
I think
that's my question. I guess.
I think it's Limcats. There's a couple of shops that do that a lot, and they actually do that on their comp guns, I believe. So they cut the slide back and
okay.
But we don't do any of that. But there are shops out there that do that. So yeah, it's another way to skin the cat.
Got it. Well, and so on this one here that we're looking at, does this gun have a name? All good guns should have a name. This one's pretty enough to have a name.
No, this one is pretty unique though. This is a 5.4 inch. We built it for Jay, a guy who works here for us. And this pistol we experimented on, and this is a 5.4, and this slide weighs almost 2 ounces lighter than a 5-inch DVC slide.
Okay.
So we did really extensive lightning on it. We did some really aggressive checkering on it.
Yeah, the checkering is ridiculous. It's absolutely gorgeous. And if you're listening to the podcast, go to the show notes. You got to see this thing. It's pretty insane. Beautiful gun.
Thank you.
But the recess cuts and everything on the slide, and then of course the weight taken off from the island barrel. That's where you get like that weight savings, right?
Yeah, of course the island barrel cutout, that's quite a bit of weight, and we tri-top it. Then you of course got your front serrations that are cut out. You can see the barrel. Do some internal cuts, but then really the checkering is what made quite a bit of the difference. On this pistol. We checkered the whole side and then cut out what we didn't want checkered. So it's it's quite a bit of
smart
metal removed.
And just as a side, back to the technique discussion we were having, we do everything on a manual machine.
Yeah.
So we don't do any of this on a CNC. It's all done on a manual mill.
Yeah, and so knowing that and knowing you guys do everything on a manual mill, when Jay pulled this out of his holster last weekend, I was like, whoa, I gotta see that thing up close. And it's cool that it's here, but it's funny that you just said you checkered the whole side and then cut those. I would have done it the opposite way. You guys are way smarter than I am.
Yeah, it was like I said, experimenting. That's when it's really fun. Building production stuff pays the bills, but when you get in there and start tinkering, new stuff is really what's fun.
Well, and custom is right in the name, right?
Yes, that's why it's called custom.
Right. So, how much of the guns that you build would you say are completely custom compared to like what you would call off the shelf, air quotes.
Nearly
off the shelf?
everyone.
Nearly everyone.
I mean, we've done enough now that we kind of have a style out there, so
Mm-hmm.
people will see photos of guns we've built and say, I like this, but I want to change this one thing, or I want, to do these couple things a little different. Or on some of our 6-inch guns, we've actually done 2 different sizes of serrations. So
Mm-hmm.
somebody will say, oh, I want only this one, like this gun, but only one size or something like that. So there's definitely some common elements in a lot of them, but yeah, we pretty much start every...
None of them are cookie cutter or exactly the same.
Every gun starts with
Yeah.
a phone call about what that customer wants, what he likes to shoot, if he has any, with injuries or anything unique that would cause him to have special needs as far as controls or weight or just anything really. So,
But
yeah.
the best ones are when someone calls up, orders a gun, and then just says, make it cool. Done.
And we have more than one build going over there that just that's all that's written on the tag. Is make it
really
cool.
make it
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, those are my favorite ones.
Yeah.
Now, do you have like a select make it cool in your head, or are you constantly thinking of like new designs, or like, hey, next make it cool, this is what it's going to be?
There's sometimes we'll do something and then we'll see that there could be some tweaks to it, whether it's sizes or shapes or just overall appearance of the gun. And then other times we're just like, let's just try something totally new.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if it doesn't come out, we don't send that to the customer, which we haven't had one yet. But every single time there's been one that's just a make it cool build, it's just come out fantastic, and it usually winds up being a really popular model later on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This
Okay.
gun has sold 4 or 5 guns. Where
Oh, it
people are
has?
Like, I want that one.
And people
And Jay was
have
super pissed
replicated
because
it?
he doesn't want anyone else to have these serrations.
Of course
so.
not. It's
Yeah.
it's very unique. Well, I mean, it was unique, but
Yeah.
it's just attractive
I
now.
was like, sorry, Jay, you should have copyrighted that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. All right. So we let's take a break real quick here, and when we regroup, let's talk about like the build process from call one. How about that?
cool.
All right. All right, guys. So let's talk about the process of building a Hayes custom gun. So if I call up and I'm like, hey guys, I've been shooting a polymer gun for the last few years. I feel like it's time for me to make a change. I see all the pro shooters, all the guys at the top shooting 2011 pistols. Like, where are we going to go with that conversation?
Well, the first thing I would ask him, and I'm usually the one that interacts with the customer first.
Mm-hmm.
I keep
Ben's mean.
chained and zip tied to his bench over
Right.
there so that he can't do anything.
And then he gets herded by the dogs.
That's
right.
So the first thing I ask him is, what are you shooting now?
Okay.
What kind of shooting do you like to do? What do you like and not like about the gun you're using now?
Okay. So
And-
I shoot a Glock 34.
Mhm.
I shoot primarily 3-gun.
Okay.
USPSA if there's nothing else going on.
So I would say, do you like, have you shot any guns that are lighter or heavier than your 34? Like, have you shot a 19 or a 17 in a match?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and how would you compare that to the 34?
So I like the 34 much better than a 17
Why?
sight radius,
Okay.
which I was told I'm wrong.
Well, you may have been misinformed. It depends on what you're trying to do. There is no, I'll say this right now. There is no one gun for everybody. Like
Okay.
you see these
And
guys
that
on
makes it
YouTube that
difficult.
say every gun should be a Glock and every Glock should be a 19, blah, blah, blah. That's just not true.
Right.
Some people have different sized hands. Some people have different levels of strength, vision, perception of what they find pleasant and unpleasant. I mean, there's so many variables. There's no possible way you can build one gun. You could build a gun that's going to be pretty decent for everybody, but
Mhm.
not perfect. And when you're
Mhm.
spending this kind of money, you want the perfect gun. So yeah, if you like the longer sight radius, I would say, Dave, you probably, I would push you towards a 5.5 or a 6-inch.
Okay.
And then as far as weight, did you notice the weight difference between the 17 and the 34?
Yeah, and on that particular gun, I feel like it's just farther out, and it's kind of weird because it's a completely hollow plastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing there in the bottom end except for a few pins and springs.
It's really hard, though, if someone has only shot polymer guns.
Yeah.
You got to ask them, have they shot a 2011 style pistol before?
Mhm.
And if they say no, then there's really not any good answers for them because you're just guessing.
Right.
Unless they've shot a 2011 and experienced it, it's hard to go from there. And
So I've shot 2011s and I've experienced them, but I just as I don't really know what I'm looking for.
If you don't
right?
know, this is what I would recommend: 5-inch bull barrel with a steel aftermarket grip.
Okay.
That's it. Like those are
So that gives us a good place to start from.
Yep. And if you don't know specifically, then you're just kind of guessing. Do I like a sight tracker? Well, I don't know.
Right.
I never shot one. Do you want to spend the money? I don't know. No, don't.
Yeah, I mean, so exactly, like, and in the first part of the show when we were talking about that, like, that's exactly the thought that was going through my head is, like, it's standing still, and it's not moving on the slides, so I would guess that I could see the sight in recoil better, which I'm told by every single USPSA book I've ever read that I'm supposed to see my sights in recoil.
I don't see the front sight at all. I'm not the best shooter, but to me, it's all about weight and balance. It's
Right.
not about seeing the sight staying still. Most of the time when I'm firing, both my eyes are closed, so I don't see the front sight. So no, that aspect is
He's
just.
blind. He almost blind in his right eye, so technically his eyes half closed all the time.
But to get back to recommending the pistol, it's hard to go wrong with a 5-inch bull barrel with a steel grip like a Chile or an Evo.
So why is that?
That's just
So why 5-inch? Let's start there.
You can do
Because it's cheaper.
It's cheaper.
A
It's
6 inches from our shop is $200 more, and a 5.4 is $400 more.
Is that because you have to take a 6-inch and cut it down?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the 6-inch sliding barrel is more expensive. So, is there anything wrong with it? No, but there's no sense spending $400 on something you don't know you need. or
Right.
want.
Okay.
So, yeah, 5 inches is more of a standard build. There's eminently more parts available.
holsters.
Holsters,
another key.
for
Holsters,
sure.
a lot of things. Some of the preferred, like we really like the Dawson toolless guide rod. They only make that in a 5-inch.
Okay.
A lot of people really want that. So
STI has some in their other ones, but that's you have to have a really loose bushing. But yeah. If you get a 5.5 inch with a toolless guide rod, you got to have a loose bushing, and otherwise it's basically the toolless guide rod is nice because you don't have to have tools.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a tight fit bushing on a 5.5 inch gun or whatever STI is, then you still have to have a bushing wrench because it comes out differently. But anyway, yeah.
And then the steel grip is much grippier than you're ever going to get a polymer grip. People do the stipple and undercut jobs on the polymer grips, and those help. But, I mean, we're in Texas, and in the middle of July.
It's wet.
Everything is sweaty.
Yeah.
So the aggressive texture of the Chile grip, and the PT Evo, you're never going to match that with a polymer grip. So, and it adds a little bit of weight, so it mitigates recoil. Something that a lot of people notice going from like a 34 to a 2011 with a steel grip is how much less it kicks.
Well, yeah, and
because of the weight.
it's like 3 times as heavy, right?
It's significant. I don't know if we've compared.
The steel grip adds about 10 ounces roughly to the gun over a polymer grip.
Now, so we're looking at a couple pistols here. What is that, a PT as
This
well?
is an Evo, yeah.
Okay.
Also.
So this is a PT, that's PT.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like porcupiney, and when you look at it like from a machining standpoint, it's like, oh, okay, they just took a end mill and burp a million times on it. Now the Chile that you guys showed me when I was here last time, that was the first time I'd ever seen that. That's a really cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool grip,
grip.
and it's not as prickly. It's not like a little
stabby.
Stabby. It's more like a really rough, aggressive tire tread.
Yeah.
Which is I like it. I
It
might
felt pretty good.
It feels really good. They both have equally awesome, amazing grip.
Mm-hmm.
As far as grip goes, they both work equally well.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little different feel.
So now let's talk about flex. So this is a steel grip. It's not going to flex at all. My first pistol was a 1911. So when people are like talk about like how they can't go back and forth between Glock and like a 1911 because of the grip angle and stuff, I always look at them kind of funny. And then how the other one is I don't know. So like 1911 is pretty much 1911 is in gun guy lore, it was God himself
The Bible.
showed John Browning how to
Yep.
make this pistol, right? Like it was the stone tablets for us. So steel frame just seems like natural.
I prefer it. I don't like shooting polymer guns. I like the weight. I like the rigidness. I like everything about the steel grip. There's nothing wrong with polymer grips. I just prefer not to shoot them.
Now, so this is so steel grip is like what, a $400 upgrade over a plastic grip?
No.
It's $650 or $700.
So
$650 or $700
Yeah,
over.
I
So
can't
now
remember the exact number.
is it like a $600 improvement on a pistol?
I say yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's
The grippiness, if you live somewhere where sweaty hands is a
Specifically
problem.
for the grippiness.
Yeah, and then the extra weight. I mean, there's really no downsides other than cost. I mean,
Right.
unless you don't have the
You can
strength
always
to
make
support
more
a heavy
money.
gun. So you can't take it with you. So bring
It's
it to
true.
us.
Ooh, that should be your new T-shirt. Can't take it with you, so bring it
So
to
yeah,
us.
that's really the only downside. Now I have shot with in the case of like a female or junior shooter, or particularly a female junior shooter, there may be some strength issues. Just if somebody's not big enough or strong enough to support I mean, this gun is heavy. This is a 6-inch sight tracker with a steel grip.
Mm-hmm.
This gun is going to get tired by the end of your arms are going to get tired of holding this gun by the end of a 40-round pistol stage. So
Yeah.
I think that the trend, we were talking about trends earlier. The trend in 3-gun is towards more utilitarian pistols that kind of do everything well. Like in
Right.
USPSA, they're only shooting a pistol, and they're doing it so fast and so abruptly that every little, the difference between a 5.5 and a 6-inch sight tracker barrel, you would notice at a major USPSA match because you're only shooting one gun. You're doing it as quick and fast as you can. 3-gun, the pistol is only 1/3 of the game, less if you count transitions and non-shooting stuff. So I think the more general utility of the pistol is emphasized as opposed to people who really, really hone in on exactly what they like. Like I've talked to a couple of really fast speed shooters about, light gun versus heavy gun. And I was told on a good day, I want the gun that's as light as possible. But
Really?
on a bad day, that light gun, you just can't get the sight to settle on target. So
Okay.
I'm not good enough to know whether I'm having a good day or bad day until I see the scores that night, right? So I'm not on that level. So when you've got that level of specialization and guys who only shoot pistol, they could probably knock all kinds of holes in all the stuff we're saying here. So everything we're saying here is definitely more oriented towards 3-gun because somebody who shoots that many pistol rounds I'm not going to have to tell them what they want.
Right.
They're going to know. So
I got you.
So yeah, it's just a little bit different game and a little bit different tools.
Okay, so the second thing you said was bull barrel. Why bull barrel?
Price. As opposed to sight tracker, it's definitely a price thing. But as far as
Less fitting and everything.
less machining, the actual barrel for a sight tracker, I think,
It's much cheaper.
SV sells them like $330 just for the barrel, and then we got to cut the slide, and then do all the barrel fitting and all that. So really expensive. But the bull over the bushing barrel because one, it's less parts, easier to take down from new shooters, and it does add a little more weight to the gun, slightly over the bushing barrel. But I like it just because I don't like messing with the bushing. And if you're shooting matches, it's not uncommon to be shooting in a really dusty place and you have to take the gun apart, several times during the course of a match at the range. So the less parts, the better as far as that goes. As far as performance, bull and bushing, there's really not much difference.
But there's not much difference accuracy-wise, is that what you're saying?
Accuracy-wise, yeah. Performance-wise, they both function the same. They both have the same accuracy potential. So it really comes down to the little bit extra weight, and it's easier to take apart on the range without losing bushing. If you drop your bushing on the ground or something, that'd be bad. But
Which will happen.
and if you get a custom gun, you want the bushing to be pretty tight, and so you're going to have a bushing wrench to take it off.
Okay.
So with a bull barrel, you don't have to have a bushing wrench to get your tight bushing off.
I gotcha.
So
interesting.
It as trends. Again, here we go, trends again. The bull barrel is the trend.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So we've so we're talking 5-inch gun. We're talking steel grip, and we're talking bull barrel.
Yep.
Where do we go from there?
The frame is actually another option that you can add. Tactical frame; those are pretty popular.
In 3-gun, I don't think there's a reason not to. It seems like
I like.
There's going to be that one time where you want to shoot a night match, and you don't want to be duct taping a flashlight to your 2011.
Yeah, we've all been there. So yeah, the tactical frame is very popular. Even though I don't shoot a lot of night matches, I still like it.
I feel like I would use it once a year, but that once a year I would be happy I did.
You'd be happy you had it, yeah.
If you went and shot a match and you couldn't use your custom pistol because it didn't have a light rail,
Yeah.
you'd be like, man.
Yeah, and so I shot a night match. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It was like a year and a half ago or whatever. But there was dudes that were like, "Well, I'm going to be shooting my carry gun because my custom pistol doesn't have a thingy on it."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this gun is kind of unique because nothing today, thanks. Say, relax. My dog wants to murder the UPS man.
He looks so nice though.
This gun, when I built it, you're talking about the night match, is what jogged my memory on this. This is a left-handed 6-inch sight tracker with a tack rail.
Mm-hmm. Hold that up for the big camera there.
There are no holsters made for this gun. I think I had a Streamlight TL series light on it. So
did you have to use a satchel?
we went and I ordered some Kydex and we learned how to make holsters.
Oh, nice.
And it was the biggest. It was hard to look at, but it worked. So yeah.
Why did you choose a 6-inch gun? So let me back up there for in this scenario where I'm calling up and I'm asking for guidance in getting a pistol made. For a while, it seemed like a lot of the guys on the 3 Gun Nation Pro Series were heading toward these bigger, longer pistols, 6-inch, etc. Maybe they all came from here. I don't know, but it seems like 6-inch, 5.5. Like that was the trend for a while, and now we're talking like 5-inch pistol is kind of like
Well, that's our recommended starting point.
Right, it's a recommended starting point. So why is that? Is it like when you're buying a new car, you're like, F it, I'm going for the sync, just so I can hook up my.
I mean, yeah, it's for me personally, the 6-inch gun is preferred because I'm a bit of a deliberate aimer. I'm not necessarily a speed shooter with a pistol, especially. So if I'm taking the time to take an aimed shot, that extra inch of sight radius helps me be more precise with my shots, right? So
I like to do that too. Like I'll take a second on those long, 8-inch plates that are like 30 yards instead of just like flinging 5 rounds and hoping the 4th one hits it.
Right. Yeah. So the longer sight radius helps you with that. Just be a little more precise. I like a front heavy gun. My rifle and pistol, I kind of like front heavy. So to me, the feel, it just feels right. It's nice and stable. When I'm aiming, if it's windy here in Texas a lot, so a heavier gun, if I'm aiming, I can support it better just because it's got a little more weight to it.
On the other hand, if you do the 6-inch, if you just took a standard factory 1911, had a 5-inch version and a 6-inch version, there's a noticeable difference there. Most people could probably tell the difference in those two guns, the way they recoil, maybe even the way the sights appear to them.
You probably feel the way it cycles too, right? Because you have so much more mass on the 6-inch.
And that's where the custom comes in. Whereas we take a 5.5 inch or 6-inch, and then we cut it up, make the slide lighter, and try to get it to feel cycling wise more like a 5-inch. So our 6-inch is not going to feel as clunky or slow, more of a as opposed to really quick when you're shooting it, because we do the extra work. We cut more out of the material out of the slide. And so a 6-inch custom gun is probably going to feel better than a 6-inch non-custom gun. So if all you've ever experienced is, like a round top GI style 6-inch gun, that's not what we're talking about here.
Got it.
So there's not as big a difference between 5 and 6-inch when you go custom, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. So the when you do take weight out of the slide, are you looking for are you guys seeking like a certain weight for the gun?
Not really. Sometimes customers will specify, if they've been reading on the internet, hey, I need it under, 10.9 or something. Like, okay. But as far as the cuts go, it needs to look cool and it needs to be functional. You don't want the slide to crack.
Right.
If you go on Instagram, you can see all kinds of really radicalized cut-up slides.
But looking cool is number one, right? Because why even show up if you're not going to look cool?
And so it's funny because people ask me that, back to this conversation with customers. I'll tell them, look, it's cosmetic mostly. Like most of what
the slide cuts.
Yeah, I mean, if we could lighten a slide and make it look way more boring than this and get it just as light or nearly as light. So well, do I need this? I mean, man, it looks awesome. Like that's. What do you mean to tell you? Look at it. Just look at it. So we don't try to act. We don't necessarily try to justify every single thing we do as this super physics-based, math problem. That this is better here than here. No, I'm not a physicist.
And on the other hand, it's really easy to cut a slide and make it light. You just cut a giant chunk out right here, or some giant chunk of metal anywhere. You cut it out. Yeah.
When you say right here, where is right here?
Function. It's really popular to cut in front of the rear sight, which you can cut inside. But if you just took a giant slice right out of the top right here, you turn the gun sideways and just run an end mill in there. You can take the whole top out of the slide.
Or some people will run an island barrel with a really short island, but have this whole channel cut back.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And just have a big gap here.
It's easy to remove weight.
That sounds gross.
But it's terrible. But removing weight and having it look good is the main goal. Functional and you want it to look cool. So, but there's not any really target weight. On this pistol here of Jay's, we really tried to push it to see how light we could get the slide.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is 8.
Knowing that it was going to be a gun that would stay in-house.
Right.
Like, we don't do super aggressive R&D type stuff on customer guns.
Yeah, so we should probably clarify then. This is an R&D piece.
Well, I mean, it's got a lot of rounds on it now, so
Right.
I would be totally comfortable selling that gun to a customer now. But at the time, like he said, they basically just put that thing in the mill and started cutting on it, just to see what would happen. And since
this slide, bear slide weighs, I think it's 8.8 ounces.
Okay.
It's a 5.4 inch. So yeah, on that one, and we could probably go even a little bit lighter, but on this one we just decided let's go really light and see how it shoots. And this gun is noticeably, it handles noticeably different as far as the recoil goes compared to my competition pistol, which has probably a 10.6 slide.
Mm-hmm. I wish I would have shot that now.
It's pretty cool. I noticed that this could be in my head just because I knew I was shooting a really light slide. But I think I noticed my front sight not coming as far down after the recoil because the weight of the slide was not pushing my front sight down.
Right.
And so I was.
I mean, it makes sense physics-wise.
Yeah, my muscle memory was to not. I was expecting the front sight to be lower, so I was not compensating because I wasn't used to the recoil in this gun. It's a good thing that it's not dipping the gun as much, but I was not used to it, and I did notice a difference.
Now, so if you'd done like all the checkering, the lightning, you assemble the gun, you take it out to test fire it, and it didn't necessarily shoot the way you wanted it to, would you have told Jay? Just between us?
Yeah, just between us, not Jay. No, if the customer isn't completely happy with the build, and even if it's one where they're like, hey, make it cool, you do whatever you want. If they're not completely happy with it, we will build them another gun. We'll take that one and sell it to someone else, and then we will build them another gun. Or if this didn't come out right, we're going to build Jay another gun.
Right.
So the end goal is to make the customer have, to give him the gun that he wants. And it's going to be
it's all about customer experience.
Very happy with. So
I'm just giving you shit.
I know.
But
no, we wouldn't have given Jay another gun.
And he's not good enough to know the difference anyway.
Oh, better take his iPhone away from him. So when you have like a gun where you see like, oh, it's this is what we were wanting. This is the make it cool. We made it cool. Has there ever been a case where you've taken it out and shot it and you're like, something's just not right? And then what do you do from there?
Not really. I mean, at this point, we've got a pretty good handle on what's going to work and what's a bad idea before we do it.
Oh, okay.
We do a lot of marker board drawings and kind of running it over in our heads. And obviously, there's some really bad ideas that never come to fruition. But no, we don't really ever have any that we're like, man, that's just total garbage. Scrap it.
There have been a couple of guns we built that I wouldn't necessarily have chosen personally, typically because they're really lightweight guns. We built a couple of pretty lightweight 6-inch guns that I did not find pleasant to shoot at all, but that's what they wanted, and both of those customers were pretty big, strong people who, have no problem with the control and the lightweight and everything. So it's you and I can shoot the same gun and have totally different perceptions,
totally different experiences
of what it's doing based on other guns we've shot, or if neither of us had ever fired a gun before, just based on what we might think it's going to be. Or there's just no way to predict
our skill level and
anything, hand size.
The stage.
There's so many things. Yeah.
So, Aaron, if I call up and you're like, oh, okay, Dave, this is your first 2011. Let's get you a 5-inch bull barrel steel frame, and I'm like, one of my buddies has a 6-inch, and he says it's the way to go. Where does the conversation go there?
I would tell you to go put 100 rounds through it and then call me back.
Okay.
And let me know what you think.
And what am I looking for in that 100 rounds?
Just whether, is it too heavy? Do you feel like you're waiting on it cycling? Some people, and this happens to me with a shotgun too, and I shoot faster ammo now because of it. I used to shoot really light ammo in my shotgun because I didn't, I wanted recoil to be minimal. And as I've gotten better, I've found that I know this wasn't actually happening, but in my mind I felt like I was waiting on the gun to cycle.
Okay.
I know I wasn't. The gun's cycling far faster than I can react and process, but it felt like it. So with a 6-inch pistol, some people get that perception also, especially with like 147 grain bullets.
Yeah.
That thing will feel like it's just going like, really slow. So I shoot 115 grain bullets that are a little snappier. So I would just say, did you feel like you were waiting on the gun? Did you feel like the sights were going back, where you thought they would be? Did it feel front heavy? Just things like that, and
Could you hold it up for 80 seconds?
Yeah,
at a time?
right. Exactly. So, where your overall impressions, basically I would ask you questions like, comparing a 5 to a 6, right? Did you shoot any far targets?
Yeah.
Shoot an 80-yard plate rack and tell me whether you did better or worse than you thought you would or you would have done with your Glock. And just kind of figure out in your mind what you thought of it and how, whether sometimes you've got to read people and figure out whether they need to be pushed a certain way or another.
Right.
Because some people want to be led to a certain place, and some people want to get there themselves.
See, some people want permission.
Yeah.
I've noticed, and
they're deferring to our knowledge base, which obviously
for sure.
We've shot so many of these guns with so many thousands of rounds. So I would want to know what I thought too if I was on the end of the phone.
Absolutely.
So I totally get people's deference to our judgment.
That I answer hundreds of questions a month on Instagram, email, Facebook, all that about 3-gun and like how do I get into it? Where do I find a match? Blah blah blah. And like a lot of times, it's like really the sense of like you just need someone to tell you it's okay to go do it, and it really is okay for you to go do it. You deserve that 6-inch sight tracker.
And I've told people
you work
that
hard
because everyone does, and I'll tell them also, look, this is not. You're not going to take this gun out to your first match and beat Daniel Horner with it.
Yeah.
Right. Like is this gun going to unlock your next level? I mean. I could sit here and argue with you that Taron Butler and Bob Vogel, could beat anybody with a factory Glock.
Yeah, they shoot pretty well.
So it's obvious the gun is not the only part of the equation. Now, will you have more fun with that gun? Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoy having cool stuff. Most gun guys are gear guys and tool guys and, dirt bike guys and whatever it is. We like to have stuff that works well and looks cool and is fun to show off and use. And just because if I'm a mid-pack shooter, that doesn't mean that that a gun like this would be wasted on me. Because it's not just about the result. Are you having fun? Are you learning? A lot of people are really fascinated with the 1911 platform, but maybe don't know that much about it. So, shooting competition with one is a real good way to learn it. And so yeah,
you said, having fun too, right?
Yeah, having fun.
There is the this is something we talk about in marketing and sales all the time. It's like the perceived value sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So like if you've got your $549 Glock 34, are you going to have as much fun as if you're shooting your $5,500 Hayes Custom Guns pistol? Probably going to have a lot more fun shooting that pistol.
Maybe. I mean, there's some guys that,
there is a little
dirt
switch
biking.
That goes
there's
in your
some
head.
guys that get off on buying a $50 dirt bike on Craigslist and putting $200 in it and going out and riding circles around guys on brand new KTMs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So there's the guy with his police trade-in Glock 40 cal that wants to come out and win a 3-gun match, and more power to him. He's having fun doing that. So like I said, perception, and what your goals are and that's one of the first questions I ask other people is, what are we trying to accomplish?
Right.
Are you trying to win? Are you trying to have more fun? Are you trying to be more reliable? Like, what's your primary goal in making a change?
But it's one of the silliest things that I hear, in my opinion. People who are hesitant to go.
I'm not good enough
to make the switch. Well, that's the second silliest. Okay. I'm not good enough. When I get good enough, I'll buy one of your guns. Well, you're never going to buy one.
Yeah.
Because
this will make you awesome.
The silliest thing is, I can't switch because I'd have to relearn putting that safety on.
Oh yeah.
What? You've got a safety on your rifle, on your shotgun, and it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And that is such nearly half the guys who are considering making the switch, I just don't have to worry about that safety, Like, why is that such a big deal? It's really not.
Yeah,
but in their head, it's the biggest hurdle to get into a 1911 platform.
But it's also one of those excuses that keeps them safe, right? So they don't have to make the jump. And,
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. But there's all kinds of things like that.
Oh,
in
so
life,
many. You never
Oh, yeah.
know why somebody does what they do. Yeah. But
It's
no,
interesting.
I've not. I know I'm a lefty, so I have ambi safety, so I've got a paddle on both sides.
Yeah.
And does it cost me a half a second? Maybe, probably. But if I'm winning or losing by half a second, there's plenty of other things I can do to make up that half a second. So the dumping it on safe, you just make sure you put it on. You dump the gun. Safely.
I think it's Horner that drops the mag and racks it back.
Yeah, Daniel Horner used to drop his mag and rack a round out of his 2011 before he ditched it, and still won by 10%. So
Casanova taught that at the very first class I went to.
Yeah,
and he's like, I bet you I can do this faster than you dump your Glock. And I mean,
and the other thing
I was newbie at the time for sure.
The other thing is, don't be an idiot and chunk your gun into the ground barrel.
Yeah.
Like, people think they're going to win it by chunking the gun in hard. You're not going to win it by, grounding your gun in a really awesome manner.
All right. That's blasphemy.
So, yeah.
I want to spear something.
Don't spear it. Don't chunk it.
And then think you missed and stop and look back and spend
Yeah,
more time.
yeah, exactly.
And then go back and check the safety.
Yeah. All right. So, guys, we're running on battery on the camera here. So let's take another break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about triggers and grip safeties.
Cool.
And then let's start talking about how people can get into something today if they're not ready for like a 2011 total.
Yeah, we've got it.
Cool.
Let's take a break. All right, dudes. Let's part 3 here. Let's wrap up the discussion on the 2011 pistols. I want to talk about sight radius. It's something we covered in the last podcast that we did about 2011s from a shooter perspective, and I got shut down quite soundly by the crowd, saying that I like a longer sight radius on a pistol, and they're like, that doesn't matter. So, tell me, does it matter for you guys? I mean, we're sitting here with a 5.4 and a 6-inch barrel.
Math says that it matters, so
right.
I take math's word for it whenever I.
What does math say about the barrel?
So let's say
sight
for
radius.
the sake of the numbers, we have a 3-inch barrel
Mm-hmm.
and a 6-inch barrel, right? We're doing this double because it's easier just for math.
Thank you.
So we've got our front sight and our rear sight, right? We line them up like this. Now let's say I happened to listen to that podcast where you got shut down, and they were talking about how you can adjust the gap in your sight picture with different widths of notches and sights, right?
Right.
So let's say we've got these 2 different barrel lengths. We've got sights on there that make our visual presentation of the sights the same. So they look the same even though one of them is twice as far away.
Right.
Because it's a wider sight to make up for it. So our gaps.
And they kept talking about the notch gap, and that was not what I was trying to say.
No.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So there is whether you like to see more daylight around your sight or not, your
Yeah.
front sight or not, so you can see more of the target. That's a different discussion.
Right.
And actually, most people would be surprised to learn that the guys that shot bullseye back when my granddad was in his heyday, they had no daylight.
Okay,
around
that
their
does surprise
sights.
me.
A totally black sight picture.
Yeah, because
And they're shooting.
USPSA it kind of edged toward a narrower sight front sight blade, right?
It's because you're not trying to hit a 2-inch bullseye at 50 yards,
Yeah, good
one-handed,
point.
standing, sometimes inebriated. So
With your hand in your pants.
yeah, exactly. So anyway, so we've got the sights size so that the visual gaps are the same on the 3-inch and the 6-inch barrel, right?
Okay.
The sights are on either end of the barrel. So you've got a perfect
Slide.
sight picture, right? You're going to hit the target every time. Let's say you're a 0.5 millimeter off on one side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So here's our 3-inch barrel. A 0.5 millimeter in our sight gap is going to equate to a certain amount of muzzle movement.
Mm-hmm.
A 0.5 millimeter on a barrel that's twice as long is going to equate to half as much travel through the arc. So you have half as much slop, or
So you
I
have
don't know,
twice as much slop. So you can
on the longer barrel, right? You've got twice the margin of error. Essentially,
Yeah.
you're gonna shoot instead of a perfect group. We're just gonna pull numbers out of our head here. Let's say you're gonna shoot. Let's say you're on your 0.5 millimeter gap on a 3-inch barrel. You're gonna be 3 inches to the left.
Right.
Your 0.5 millimeter gap on a 6-inch barrel, you're only gonna be 1.5 inches to the left.
Interesting. So I was right, is what you're saying.
Now,
Yes.
here's
High five.
a interesting
Yes!
topic of discussion. If it were the case that the distance that your sights are apart was irrelevant, then what you would do is take a sight tracker and mount the rear sight on the
Yeah.
island barrel itself,
Right.
right up there with the front sight. That way you eliminate all accuracy issues, and how accurate the barrel will shoot is how accurate your sight picture is. Because the discrepancy between accuracy is in a pistol is basically your sights are not attached to your barrel. So if your slide's going one way, your sights are going that way, and the barrel might be going the other way. So if you can mount your sights directly on the barrel, however accurate your barrel is, that's how accurate your gun would be.
Right.
And the
that
fit
makes
of the gun
sense.
is irrelevant.
Right, and the fit of the gun, it could be a sloppy GI, which
Because this accuracy of this gun is dependent on this rear sight going back to the same spot every time in relation to this front sight.
Right.
Because they're not on the same piece.
Okay.
And
And
actually,
so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a custom pistol and tighter fitting, right?
Right,
Is
yeah.
that
That's-
it's going to return to the same place again and again and
consistently.
again.
that's one aspect of it, yes. And so another thing that Clark's did actually or tried to do is they took a red dot and mounted it on a hybrid or sight tracker barrel.
Mm-hmm.
So
A
you
long
could,
time ago.
You could take Well, the problem was that the unlocking
Well,
the
the red
barrel
dots are probably this long.
the barrel
heavy.
the barrel unlocking was so violent that there's not really any red dot that can withstand more than 1,000 or 2 rounds of that. The red dots would break or crack or come unglued.
These are 45s. typically.
Shear screws
Right.
off. But basically, if you could take your sights and mount it to your sight tracker barrel, you could take that barrel and put it in any gun, and it would be just as accurate in no matter what gun, no matter how sloppy it is.
Oh,
So
interesting.
if those guys who say that the sight radius is irrelevant, mount a front and rear sight on your sight tracker barrel, and you've got the most accurate gun that you could possibly have with that barrel.
Right. Well, you know,
But they're not going to be able to hit anything because their sights are only 2 inches apart.
yeah.
I mean, that's why you take out a J-frame or an officer's model or some little short slide gun and try to shoot a group with it.
Well, and I always think about that with like the Glock 26 is what I carry. So that compared to the 34 always seems like it just points so much better. And I don't even mean like the way it feels. It just means like when you're shooting it and you're trying to acquire something with the sight, not just point shooting. It feels like it gets to where I need to go much easier.
And we're not talking about huge differences. I mean, there's still plenty of people who could shoot, a J-frame or a Glock 43 really well. It's not to say you can't shoot those well, but in an action shooting environment, particularly on a small target, like this 50, 60-yard plate racks we see, like that would be a real bitch with a Glock 43.
Yeah, right.
Even if it had a perfect trigger in it, just because the sights are closer
So
than
close
optimal.
together.
So that's why the longer sight radius is beneficial. Now, some people shoot so fast that they're not ever seen a perfect sight picture, so that person may not care as much about it as I do. I try to get a good sight picture even when I'm shooting fast. I'm constantly having to tell myself to speed up with my pistol because I find myself aiming shots at paper from me to you, and it's like, no, what am I doing? So,
And in fact, you can find some old school bullseye guns that have what's basically a hardball front sight that extends 1.5 inches or so beyond the slide.
Oh, no kidding.
So basically, it looks like a giant horn.
Looks
off
like
the
a
end
magneto speed hanging off of it.
Yes, and that's to get a 6-inch or 6.5-inch sight radius out of a 5-inch gun. It looks retarded, but it was a cheap modification to get a better sight radius for bullseye shooting.
Huh.
and you can only take the slide so long before the gun quits functioning. If I recall, my grandpa experimented with it. So they used to make 6-inch guns by welding. They would cut 1 inch off of a slide and weld it to the front of another slide.
They were the originator of the 6-inch slide by doing that.
Oh, no kidding.
They bought
a lot of innovation out of that shop.
I think my grandfather bought a 55-gallon drum or something, some huge container worth of GI slides that had been chopped up.
Oh.
And he only needed the last
gold
inch.
mine.
Yeah. He only needed the last inch. And so if you look in an old school gun, a 6-inch gun, there's actually 2 slots cut in there for the bushing tabs. There's the original 5-inch slot, and then there's the piece they welded on. It's got another bushing tab slot. So that's one way to tell if you've got an old school welded on 6-inch slide.
And the finish won't match a lot, too, because they blued most of the
two
guns,
different
and
kinds of
it
metal.
would never show up perfectly.
Yeah, as far as the overall length goes, it was like it
was not like 6.5 or 7. It started to be just the timing for unlocking and the barrel exiting the barrel. And
your barrel unlocking coming down started to affect the bullet. The bullet was still in the barrel as it was unlocking at a certain length, but yeah.
Huh. That's pretty
They did some tinkering back in the days.
You know what I love about they were the innovator of this, the innovator of this. There's got to be like twice as many stories of shit that didn't work.
There's a shop full of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like the island of misfit toys.
I mean, we've only been in this shop for 3 years, and you can see the amount of stuff we've accumulated. Imagine being in a shop for 60 years. The projects and random stuff you'd have laying around.
You have like a big hall of shame of all your projects that didn't work out.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. That's awesome. All right, so I'm glad you explained that. I'm even more glad that I was right. So let's talk about the again this scenario, customer calling up looking for 2011. Let's talk about trigger and grip safety, because I'm looking at these and I see that the PTs are non-functional. Now there's some sort of controversy on the last podcast we did where we said that the PT grip does not allow for a functional grip safety.
That is incorrect.
That is incorrect.
Yes. Now, I don't know if the PT was designed, cut in so far as that it couldn't have a functioning grip safety, but I've put, Ed Brown Beavertail grip safety with the PT grip, and it functions.
Okay.
That's not an issue. You do have to use a separate aftermarket Beavertail
Okay.
So I don't know. I had not heard that. And in fact, speaking of the grips, where they cut this in, it might be a combination that they actually added material to the back as well as cut it in to make it look more pronounced.
Looks kind of like CZ-like, right?
Yeah, somewhat.
A little bit.
Because, like the other guys
Hold
were
that up to
saying,
the camera.
there's only so much you can go in before you start making
Yeah.
cutting into important parts. So depending on what grip you have, it might actually be a little bit built up in the mainspring housing area to give it more of a contour going in as opposed to cutting this part down. I'm not exactly sure on the dimensions of all that, but I know you can have a working beaver tail with a PT grip.
Okay.
But another thing, we were talking about grips. If you have say a factory STI pistol and you put an Evo grip on a gun.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's like a common upgrade. I see a lot of – so I've been trolling Ken's list a lot, which – if you don't have any context, kind of sounds funny. now I think about it. Which is
Have you met Ken yet?
It's practice scores classifieds. Let's see that. Let me start that over. I've been trolling practice score classifieds a lot, looking for pistols. And one of the things I see a lot, especially in 40 caliber pistols, is like STI edges or what was their old one? The Marauder?
The Marauder, yeah, short-lived, I think.
And then there's a Piro. So
the Piro, I believe, was an island barrel.
Yeah, that's
was it? Okay. Yeah. So those I see a lot of 40 calibers with bare metal grips on them. Obviously did not come from STI that way because they all have polymer grips. So leading into what you were talking about, it seems like a common thing.
That is a very common thing. And really
kind of like that gun.
When you're kind of like this grip.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, if you take an STI and then add say an Evo or a Chile, you're really in custom gun territory with the money. But the benefit is you don't have the weight. You can get it basically as fast as you can get your steel grip. You can have a
so
that,
WAIT.
Yeah. Yeah, a waiting list is in time period. But yes, it's really popular. That's just because it makes the gun shoot better.
Especially on a 40 cal where they're trying to add weight to mitigate recoil.
And that's why I mentioned 40 cal because it seems more prolific on the 40 cal pistols, and I would imagine for the same reason you were just talking about there.
Yeah.
There are some things you have to know or should know if you plan on doing that. Some drawbacks. The STI factory triggers, the plastic polymer triggers, they will function just fine in the PT Evos, but they don't fit that tight, so the tolerances they're pretty loose.
So during the break you showed me on a PT grip that you're working on for a customer. You grab one of your STI triggers and you can definitely wiggle it in there.
Right,
and down.
It has a lot more play, and so if you're going to go ahead and spend $700 on a grip, you might as well spend another $60 on an aftermarket either SV or the X line trigger to go with your Evo grip.
And those are aluminum triggers, right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so when a customer is wanting to spec out a pistol, how do you lead them down the trigger path to figure out which is the best trigger for them?
So really length is much more important than shape. Shape is really you can get used to anything.
Yeah.
Flat or curved doesn't really matter. There's some top curves, some bottom curves, all kind of weird things. But flat or curved.
Is there a reverse curve?
Yes, there is. I believe X-Line makes one.
Everybody's got to make something goofy.
Double curve would be next.
Ooh.
But
write that down.
The length of pull or the length of your trigger is really most people use just like a medium. And whether that's curved or flat doesn't really matter. If you have, unless most people with small hands know they have small hands. That might be something in their subconscious.
Oh yeah, dude.
Really, it's always on their mind because I have small hands.
Constantly dropping my cup of coffee. Yeah. What kind of trigger would you recommend?
If you know you have small hands, then probably a short trigger. Doesn't matter flat or curve. But medium length is generally pretty universal.
And that's a question that I ask people is, in the initial conversation is, are your hands average, big, or small? Do you typically have trouble operating controls? Or I know you guys in your previous podcast talked about the extended mag releases, right? So somebody with big hands will drop a mag with an extended mag release. I'm a lefty. So
on accident.
On accident. Yeah, exactly. Not intentionally. I have this on here because I'm a lefty. I hit this with my index finger. It's actually extended,
I saw that.
But not oversized button. So for a right-hander, you'd be a lot less likely to hit it than you would a giant paddle button right there. But right-handers with big hands, when they go to grip the gun like this, they wind up squeezing that mag release button, and boom. So I ask them if they have issues on other guns with that, whether they prefer certain types of controls. Because some people, we've all got the certain way we like for certain things to feel. Once you get, I don't know of many people who own just one 2011. So as you start to accumulate them, you'll want them to all kind of have some areas of commonality where they, the same shape of safety and the same this. And that's a lot of, when I ask people on the phone, guys who were building like a second or third gun for, and they've already got a gun, they'll send me pictures of I want my safety shaped like this, or
From
I
Ken's
want
list.
Yeah. So I spend a decent amount of time going over customers who own other guns, and what they might want us to do to ensure that there's uniformity in the way the guns feel, so they can pick up one or the other. Guys want a 9 and a 40, so they can shoot PSA and 3-gun, but they want it to feel the same. Or as close as they can reasonably get it.
So they don't have to relearn it every time they
So we do a lot of stuff like that, too.
But if it's, a new customer coming into it that we're talking about here, they don't know if they like any of that.
Yeah.
So that's why we try to keep it pretty vanilla, in the middle. We don't like to put giant buttons on or extra long triggers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that stuff we keep right in the middle, just a standard mag well, standard extended single-side thumb safety, standard mag button size. And so unless they know they like something, that we're not going to push them in that direction.
Right. So this one here actually, Jay's gun has a really sweet mag release. I can actually reach.
That's
That's kind of nice.
A little bit unique. That's a PT Evo grip with a SVI magazine released installed.
Okay.
So,
yeah, I can actually reach it. It's pretty nice. Okay, so kind of mid-range mid-range medium on the trigger, unless you're known to have small hands.
Yeah.
If you're the president of the United States, you get you a small little trigger, tiny little trigger. All right, so what weight do you guys typically set the trigger at?
2.5.
2.5?
Yep. If you go any lighter than that, you can surprise a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not.
Why are you laughing and looking at me?
Well, well, as we're sitting here looking at these guns in the break, Dave picks one up and goes, "Wow, that went off sooner than I expected."
And also, if you get a trigger much below that, it requires more frequent periodic maintenance to keep it clean and consistent and safe. So, if you don't live around the corner from us, it's just a pain. If I send you a gun that you shoot enough that every 3 or 4 months you're going to need a trigger tune-up, once a year.
What kind of tune-up would you do on a trigger? I'm
just
not familiar with that.
spring adjustment, cleaning it.
Okay.
You'd be surprised how much on a 1.5 pound, 2-pound trigger grit in your trigger fire control group can really affect the feel.
Yeah, because 10% of 1.5 pounds is
it's
a lot.
not much. So, stuff can get built up in your mainspring housing. It just a whole bunch of little things kind of combined.
But 2.5 pounds is a really it's a light trigger that you can shoot in any competition, and it's
it'll last a long time.
Really a light trigger that works well, but it's still very safe. And most people do not have ADs with a 2.5 pound.
Most people.
If you're coming from a Glock or an XD or something with a really long, heavy trigger pull, or even either say a factory GI 1911, 2.5 pounds is a huge difference over 4.5, 5.5 pounds. So 2.5 is about as low as it's our standard, and that's what we like and feel comfortable with for most people as a general starting point.
Mm-hmm. Now, if someone calls up and they're like, I'm a, Grandmaster or 3-Gun Nation Pro or whatever they want to say, and they're like, I need a 1.5 pounds.
Yeah, we do lighter.
You can deliver?
We do lighter and
Okay.
we do heavier. So actually, there's more call for heavier triggers than lighter triggers.
Is that right?
Yeah.
A lot of the guys that have that request have learned to do it themselves.
Oh, okay.
Because there's not a lot of people that will do it. There's people that can, but a lot of shops just for liability reasons, don't like to flirt with the very, very edge of the line there. So a lot of people that are high-level guys like that will just do their own triggers.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or at least maintain them. We'll set it to 2.5, and then they do the extra little bit of work to get it down where they like it. Or some people like it for it to have a lot more take-up. Or
there's not a lot of people who request
A little
anything, under 2 pounds. Like under 2 pounds is super light. And so, especially in 3-gun, where you got all 3 guns, you're ditching guns a lot. It's a little different game when you have the gun in your hand all the time.
Yeah. Well, and plus you're going from like a 8-pound trigger on your shotgun
Yeah.
to 3-pound trigger on your rifle to 1.5 pound.
Yeah. So generally 2 pounds is, not a lot of people request anything lighter than 2 pounds, and 2 pounds is pretty light.
Okay. Okay. All right. So anything that we missed in the build process, or like, do you have like one tip that you can give the audience if they're considering like a custom pistol?
I mean, it sounds, as the owner of the shop saying this, it's going to ring hollow, but don't skimp out budget-wise if it's something you really, really, if you're having to think long and hard about how bad you want it, go ahead and get it, because there have been customers who will order a gun and have it for 2 weeks and then send it back and say, no, I want you to do this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something they didn't do in the beginning. So, like Ben was saying, if you don't really know, then we kind of push them towards just a more basic, I hate to use the word basic, a more standard configuration gun. That way they can learn what they like and don't like on a $3,500 or $4,000 gun instead of a $7,000 gun.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what you want, because it took me a little while to learn that, and it'll take most people to. But, if you're really, really on the fence about something, or you really want it, take that extra month or two to save up, or however long it'll take. I mean, we just collect a deposit up front, and then the balance is due on delivery. So, and that's how it is for most custom guns. So you've got time.
Right.
If I tell you it's going to be 12 months, a $600 or $700 difference in price isn't going to seem that much when you've got 12 months.
Yeah.
Before you're going to have to pay the difference, So,
yeah. Well,
and in the long run, if you're going to shoot this gun for 10 or 15 years, I mean, if you amortize that amount over that amount of time,
that's what I was just thinking. Like, it reminds me of buying like a new truck or a new car. So my dad is like extraordinarily cheap, like classic cheap, right? Like I could tell you stories all week long, but the best one is that my dad has me buy him beer in Wyoming when I'm on my way to see him because
tax or something.
It's cheaper than Utah, because Utah sin taxes the shit out of beer. And he's like, "I'll pay you when you get here." It's like, do you drink beer once a year, old man? But anyway, so that's one example.
Yeah.
But one of the things that even him and his extraordinarily cheapness, and also he doesn't listen to podcasts, said, if you're going to buy a car, buy the high level car.
Yeah.
And if you got to go down like a level of car from like from a GMC Sierra Denali to like a Silverado and get the high level of Silverado, you're gonna be much happier if you buy the higher one, because you're gonna have it forever. And him, like, he drives them until they don't work anymore, right? Because he's extraordinarily cheap. So it's like same thing with a pistol. It's like, if you're gonna have that thing and you're gonna be shooting 18 major matches and 13 club matches a year, and you're going to be shooting 100,000 rounds.
Well, I mean, so a sight tracker is a $600 upgrade, right? Over a year that you would have to get ready. Let's say we're on a year build time. That's $50 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not that's not nothing, but most people who are shooting, obviously they're prioritizing it enough that they're investing this much in a pistol. So just if it's something you really want, you don't want to wish for the next 10 years that you had gotten it.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to care about that $600.
Yep.
When you're out there shooting and it's not the exact gun you want. So it's kind of, and we kind of try to read the customer and get a feel for, whether they're just having a hard time letting go of their money and it's keeping them from the exact gun they want, or, I've had discussions with people and they'll be like, man, I just, can we cut here and can we cut there? And I said, look, man, yes, we can, but here's what I want you to do is save your money for 6 months and then call me, because I know what you want. Like, I want to build you the gun you want.
Right.
Not the gun you don't want. And because I know what I like, and I know how I react when I get things that aren't the way I like. So
nice stuff is nice.
Yeah, and you want it to be yours. We spend a lot of time getting guns the way the customer wants them, so it's not a step to overlook.
Do you ever get like a customer that calls up and is like, I want the best of everything, call me when it's done?
We've had a couple.
I love customers like that.
Well, then we have to define best, and then we start arguing about it here at the shop, and so that's usually the start of a slippery slope.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I think we've covered custom guns pretty well.
Yeah.
You think we missed anything? Do we need to go back on anything?
All right, not that I know of.
I think we got everything. Oh, we want to talk about the real quick. Let's cover the origin of the 5.4. Why 5.4, not 5.5?
As I understand it, the 5.4-inch gun was built or exists because IPSC overseas has a box. Instead of a list of rules you have to follow. Well, they do have some rules, but instead of just that, they have a box your gun has to fit in. And my understanding was a 5.4-inch barreled gun was the longest barrel that they could get on a gun that would still fit completely in the box. So, and I know Infinity is generally known for making 5.4-inch guns, and they sell a lot of guns in Europe. So as I understand it, that's the origin of the existence of a 5.4-inch gun.
Right.
We don't have a NIPSC box here, so it's just kind of one of those random numbers that has
just like
stuck and
carries over.
Yeah, and I'm like, I remember Dylan Easley was the first customer that wanted a 5.4-inch gun, and I never really pushed it, and he and I would probably laugh about it when he hears this. We're going to, but it was really hard for me to resist saying, well, why not 5.5? Like, what, but that's what he wants. That's what he wants. It doesn't matter to us whether it's 5.5 or 5.4.
Well, that's what I've always wondered. Like, why not 5.6?
It's such a random, specific number.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, good to know. All right, so let's talk about like you've got another pistol here for us, Ben, that magically appeared during the podcast.
Yep. Sometimes they fall off the walls around here.
This place is lousy with pistols. What are we looking at, and what type of person would want this type of
Yeah.
pistol?
So we're talking about people coming from a polymer gun to a 2011 style, and that's a really big jump in price. It's a huge jump, and especially if you're not familiar with them, you're looking for a middle ground. Well, I want to get into that style of platform, but I don't want to drop $5,000 or $3,000 even. So the Rock Island, this is a Rock Island 1911 style, high capacity. It's actually a clone of a Para P18. And this pistol came into our shop. I believe Daniel Jurassic and his fireman team were the first ones to purchase these. And they brought these in. And I said, hey, what can we do with them? So we started looking, would they be a good candidate for a competition pistol? We started doing a couple of renditions of slide cuts and things like that. And the whole goal was to make this a really budget-friendly pistol to where you get a lot of the same features of a high-end gun, but without the really expensive price tag. Now, of course, you are going to sacrifice some things, like fit and finish. They're not as accurate. But for things like 3-gun or USPSA, this is a fantastic pistol, and it's very capable. This one is actually our newest model, and this is our HCG, our Hayes Custom Guns model, is the top-of-the-line Rock Island that we do. That's where we do all the reliability work, trigger work, DLC code. We give it the works, and then this one just came out where we added open package capabilities to it, where we add a frame mount. It actually comes with another barrel that's ported, so you can go back to your iron sights, or you can switch it over to shoot open division. And this pistol, an HCG pistol out the door, is going to go about $1,650, and that's for a 9mm iron sighted gun. Cool slide cuts, DLC, just super reliable.
Trigger job.
New
sights.
So basically, the works. A gun that I would want to take out and compete with.
Right. And does that include the price of the pistol?
Yes, that includes the price.
Okay.
And we can work on customer supplied guns, or we can supply the gun. Either way. But one of the main benefits to this pistol, we were talking about adding the steel grips to the STIs a minute ago. Well, this pistol is all one frame and grip construction, and it is all steel construction.
Yeah, so it's similar to like a 1911, right?
Yeah, it's a double stack 1911. So that's another thing that needs to be clarified. And when you say 2011, what do you mean?
What do I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean the frame and slide are two separate pieces. It's a double stack.
Frame and grip.
Excuse me, frame and grip are two separate pieces.
Yep.
Double stack, and it was made under the patent of Strayer Voigt, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
And do you know why I know that?
Why do you?
You told me that 2 years ago. Right over there.
Yes. So when I say 2011, I'm referring to anything that has the detachable grip from the frame.
Yeah.
Which
is what we've been talking about this whole time.
Correct. Yeah, the Evos, the Chilis, those are all 2011 style grips. But the Rock Island is a Para style.
Right. And
the Rock Island and the Caspian, and now the Remingtons, they are different. The grip and frame are all one piece, all made of steel. So there's little minor differences in what that does to the gun. But basically, you can't interchange this grip. It's there forever.
Right.
It's part of the frame. And so so it has
Scales. Can you replace the scales like
yes,
you can on a
just
normal
like
1911?
Yep, traditional 1911.
Okay.
There are panel grips that go on. But the main benefit of this Rock Island is it comes with that all steel grip,
Mm-hmm.
and so it adds that extra weight, which is a $700 upgrade roughly on a STI.
Well, and so this is like a it's a one piece too. So is that more rigid than a two piece, or does that even come into play?
In theory, it that design might be more rigid, but there's not a problem of rigidness with the two pieces. That's not an issue. But if you like a heavy gun, and I love heavy guns, especially for 3-gun, this gun comes with basically the $700 upgrade that the STI doesn't have from the factory.
Right.
So when you look at it that way, and this model comes with a tack frame,
Mm-hmm.
which is another expensive upgrade on a lot of 1911, 2011s. So
yeah, that's weird. As I just said, it was weird. I realized why that is, because they have to machine the Picatinny in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's odd that like a lot of them don't come with it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
And this pistol, and of course Daniel Jurassic just killed it with his Rock Island for a couple years. He was just awesome on the 3-gun scene, winning matches, and the gun had a whole lot of rounds through it, and he really put it to the test. And so ever since then, we've really started refining our packages and what we do to these things, and they've really developed into a really, really nice, fun shooting gun. And this is actually my competition pistol for the year. This is a new Rock Island that I just built with the open package on it. And I'm on the fence about whether I'm going open or iron sights. So
you figured you build it both ways?
Yeah. So just a lot of fun.
You're open curious is what we call those people on the podcast.
Yeah, open curious. And now with the new Rock Island shotgun coming out that we're tinkering with, I'm really open curious.
I saw one in pieces over there.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. But no, and this gun with the ported barrel handles light ammunition, light powder puff loads just phenomenally well. This
is the one that you did the YouTube video on, right?
I believe so. We've done several slow-mos, and I think this was one of the ones. But yeah, a lot of people like to say when they see a comped gun, they're like, oh, you got to bump your powder up, to work the comp. Well, we took this gun out with the standard barrel, the non-ported one, and the ported barrel, shot them side by side, and it was a noticeable difference with the powder puff loads. So it's a lot of fun to shoot.
Right.
A lot of fun.
So then if you buy one of these, then you don't even need to go full Hayes Custom Guns then, right?
You don't need to, no.
So what a lot of people will do, well, I say a lot, a decent amount of people will call up and order a custom pistol and then order one of these. Mm-hmm. And it takes us usually around 6 weeks or so to get these ready. And then they shoot this until their custom's ready. And what that does, if you can, obviously that adds expense, but what it does is allows you to shoot a gun like this and learn what you like and don't like. It obviously doesn't take us a year to build your gun.
Right.
There's some time there before we start the build, and we always get in touch with the customer and say, hey, we're starting, everything's still good. So you can shoot this for 6 months and learn what you like and don't like, and call us and say, hey, on that custom one, let's do this instead, and let's do that instead. And then these are generally,
that's a good point.
And these are generally, they make great backups, they make great loaners, or they're generally pretty easy to move. So, he gets to where his custom is done and wants to sell this one. He's not going to lose much money on this, if any.
Right.
But these are
and then you got to get rid of your holster and mag pouches too, so you sell it.
At that point, it's just easier to keep the gun and buy more.
But these have been increasing in popularity drastically. Like, these are becoming one of the go-to pistols that people mention. You go on Facebook, what's the best pistol?
Yeah.
These are popping up as a very good option. And this one was designed to kind of compete with the STI DVC, but for a whole lot less money. Now, there are some downsides, to a budget gun. This one is not nearly as contoured in the grip, which if you're used to shooting a 2011 and you go to this, it's probably going to feel blocky. It's probably not as good for junior shooters because it's blocky.
Yeah, it's not good for Dave shooters. I can't even reach the...
Yeah, and
I can reach this one.
Well, that's got an extended button on it. Yeah, so there's a few drawbacks.
Let's talk about this.
Okay, yeah, that's our...
So, got the new Hayes Custom Guns magwell. Hold that up for the camera. Now, this... at first glance, you're like, okay, cool, it's a magwell, neat. But this is actually like a little bit...
a little bit better.
A little bit better. you actually put some thought into this, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, there was an issue that's not real prevalent, but it can pop up from time to time. The factory magwell has one center screw that goes right into the mainspring housing. And, again, these are budget guns, so some of them have plastic mainspring housings, which means there's a little more play in there. And when you crank down on the set screw to tighten the mag well up, it could push in on the mainspring housing, which pushes on your sear spring, which could potentially add a little bit of weight to your trigger pull.
Right.
So we put 2 set screws that go on either side of the mainspring housing and hit the steel frame.
So the mag well does not affect the trigger pull at all.
Correct.
And this design can't.
This mag well does not interface with the mainspring housing
right.
at all. And so a couple of things with these Rock Islands, there wasn't a whole lot of aftermarket parts, because these were not 3-gun competition pistols. Not a lot of people were using them, so there wasn't nearly the amount of options for them. Triggers is a place where I think there's Guncraft is about the only manufacturer for triggers. This I just put in one of the new Chile triggers in this one. Actually, I'm experimenting with that, and so far I like it. Might need a little tweaking, but hopefully there's going to be more manufacturers making parts for these things. But yeah, we made the magwell for it because there wasn't one out there that was sufficient for what we wanted. This is another cool thing that we did. So the whole idea is to keep these guns budget friendly. Well, there wasn't a frame mounted mount that would accept a Viper or Venom red dot.
Right.
The Viper and Venom are a little bit cheaper than, say, a Delta Point or a Razor.
So they also sit lower than both of those
yes,
as well.
I believe these sights were designed to have a lower red dot.
Yeah.
They're designed to be mounted right on the slide.
Right.
Well, so we had a mount manufactured that we could use the Venom and Viper red dots. Save you a little money, get a little bit lower. So, everything with these guns is...
It's got the sweet Hayes Custom Guns logo on there, too.
Yeah. And so it's not hard to make a really awesome gun. It's really hard to make a really awesome gun that's affordable to the new shooter. So everybody's like, oh, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Well, because you might as well buy a 2011 at that point, So the iron sight version of this is, $1,650, which is a really good price point to get into. It's not,
and so
DVC money.
The base 5-inch plastic grip that we were talking about, $3,500 for 2011.
2011.
I think so. 35 or 36, yeah, somewhere
this
there.
Is,
I'd
this
have
is
to go back and
2000.
look.
This is 2019, so
I'll
don't
be
hold
honest,
us to this in the future.
We've never built a single one like that.
Okay.
So that's why I don't know the number.
Well, and we're going from Dave's memory, so don't quote us on that.
But yeah, it's in that neighborhood.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there are
about
some
half.
big difference. Yeah, it is about half, and so you do sacrifice some accuracy. These are not as accurate as a custom build, that's for sure. The ergonomics are not as good. But for people who want to get into competitive shooting, this is a fantastic option. If you're in that not quite custom gun money, but you want to move up from a polymer gun,
right?
It's a great option.
Well, I also think it's like a pretty good option to completely skip the polymer gun to begin with. Like if you're new.
Yeah, and we offer 3 packages on this. You can get
the one with the reliability package is like surprisingly cheap.
Yeah. So if you want to get into it, just skip the whole polymer thing. You can get a Rock Island, and you can bring it to us, and I think for $350, something around there, you get our race ready package, and basically that's where we go through and do our reliability work. We do a trigger job, and we do some beveling to make the gun more comfortable, and it's everything that I would need or want to go start shooting without dropping a whole lot of money into it.
Right.
So if you want to get into it, you do that, get the race ready package, you're ready to rock, and then if you want to upgrade later on to the HCG, you can do that, and we apply your previous money to it.
Allow me to pile on here too, because the biggest I guess what the hell do they call it? False economy is like, I'm just going to shoot a Glock. Like, yeah, right. Yeah, you're just going to shoot a Glock. Okay, so you're paying I think what's MAP on like a Glock 34, like 550,
Probably,
580,
yeah.
something like that. So let's just say it's 550 for round numbers, and then you're going to go buy sights. Right,
Tungsten guide rod.
$80. You're going to buy a tungsten guide rod. You're going to
Stipple
buy
the grip.
trigger sucks. So I'm going to buy a trigger.
And
I don't
it still
want to.
sucks.
Yeah. I'm only saying this because like I have
Oh, yeah.
done this.
You'll be $1,200 or
with several
$1,300
pistols.
into that Glock.
Exactly.
Before you realize what happened.
Yeah.
And all those improvements don't improve it that much. Like trigger, of course, but it's still going to.
I would say that it's miles beyond a stock Glock, but it's not
Still
anywhere near like a 1911 trigger type thing.
Yeah, it still shoots like a Glock. Now, the triggers, obviously, trigger and sights are 2 most important parts of the gun. And so it's still going to have a Glock style trigger, and that's a huge difference.
And like we said when we started this, like Shane Coley can shoot the living shit out of a Glock,
Yeah.
for sure.
But I'm not
So-
Shane Coley. I'm not Taryn Butler. I'm never
True.
going to be. So why would I? spend years and years trying to be Taryn Butler when I can just be Aaron with the gun I want. It's not all about winning.
There you go.
So,
and you too can be Aaron.
it's easy.
No, yeah, these are really good options and actually pretty good shooters.
Man,
too,
you want to talk about hate, the haters.
Oh, dude.
You mentioned these, and people just can't stand it. Like,
why is that?
I'm the first one to admit that this is not a high-end gun.
It's a cheap gun.
Yeah, it's a cheap. This gun is like $720 retail, which you can
Rock
buy for.
Island even admits that.
Yeah,
Like,
nobody's trying to pretend that this is a Lambo.
right.
It's a cheap gun that we're doing mods
Would you
to
call
make
it
it useful.
Camaro Z28?
Well, then I'm gonna have a bunch of guys with mullets after me.
That's what I was thinking.
Making fun of Z28s.
I could grow a mullet and,
Yeah.
and rock this. Is it a
could.
Trans Am? It's even better.
It's something. It's a Subaru WRX.
That means you have to do flat bill sideways.
Yeah, I had a WRX, so I can speak to that. It is a rough around the edges monster, and that's what this is. Like,
Okay,
you can
there
put a
you
little
go.
bit of money in a WRX and
Make
have
them
something
pretty
that'll
fast.
run with anything.
Yeah.
Daniel Jurasic won multiple majors with the first Rock Island we built, and in fact, a gun that had a lot of our R&D work on it. And it'll be a long time before this gun holds you back compared to a custom. Is there differences?
Yeah.
Sure. When you're looking at these two guns side by side, yes, you're going to be able to see immediately where the money went.
Well, yeah, I mean,
But-
that in that case, it is like a Z28 sitting next to a Lambo.
Yeah.
You can look at them and you can see the quality for sure.
Yeah. I mean, nobody's going to say that the Lambo's not a nicer car. They'll both get to the finish line in the same amount of time. That gun's still going to hit the target,
Yeah.
which is really, in the end, what we're trying to do. So,
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So, in talking about Rock Islands with several 3-gun shooters on the range, and looking at pistol upgrades myself, which is the reason I'm doing this whole series, because really the show is just all about me. But
I knew you didn't want to hang out with us.
no, I do.
Go upstairs and hit your head again.
Yeah. We'll have to tell that story. So this has been described to me as a speed bump on the way to a 2011.
I would say no.
No?
No.
A speed bump on the way
I
to
would-
a 2011.
It's just going to be something you do for a year or two, and then until you actually nut up and buy a 2011.
Well, it takes a year or two to get a good 2011. So,
right.
yeah, that's what they should be doing.
Way to spin that one. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
A speed bump on the way to 2011.
Yeah, speed bump on the way to 2011.
Whoever said that, had they shot one?
I don't know.
Because that's what I find most. There's a trend there. People dog them or bag on them and say, "Oh, they're bottom of the barrel," which is very vague.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, "Well, have you shot one of our guns?" The answer is always no. Well, you have no idea
Right.
until you've shot one of our worked over ones. They're nothing like a factory gun, because the factory guns are very rough and they often have feeding issues, and that's not what we're dealing with here. I wouldn't recommend someone go buy a Rock Island right out of the box and start running it in a competition.
But people have.
They do,
And
yeah.
some of them run, but
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A lot of them don't.
Some of them will run fantastic, and some of them will have a usable trigger. But when I'm doing my videos, I'm not comparing anything to a factory Rock Island. That's like this is a long ways away from a factory Rock Island. And I would shoot this gun, for the rest of my shooting career and be totally happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Will I shoot another 2011 later? Sure, I will, because I like nice things. But I have very few complaints with this pistol and its performance on the range.
Yeah. Yeah, and you actually shoot really well with it, too.
Sometimes I get lucky.
Yeah. One more thing on the haters. If you want to spend maybe an hour or so, 2 hours, just giggling, go look at the video that Ben did under the Hayes Custom Guns YouTube channel on the CZ.
Oh, man.
Was SPO1
It's the Tax
the
Sport
Tax
Orange.
Tax Sport Orange
Get run out of town about that
against the Rock Island. Knowing Ben in the capacity that I do, I giggled and giggled and giggled at every single comment on there. I was laughing so hard, but only in the way that one of your buddies gets roasted, you can laugh.
Yeah.
So
I think I got more.
That was
hate,
harsh, buddy.
More hate from that video. How's it called? Idiot and kid. And
That's what I was thinking. I was looking at the number of comments you had. I'm like, wow, people must have loved it. Nope.
Yep. But
Nobody goes on the internet to talk about things they love, Dave. Come on. You should know that.
It's so true, dude.
Myself included.
Aaron is probably one of those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aaron has five ghost accounts just to troll his little brother. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think picked your brain pretty well on custom pistols today. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you think we should cover? Ben, we'll start with you here. Anything you want the audience to know before we leave them for the day?
You know, if you're a lot of our customers are just getting into the sport, and I would really encourage them to take a look at the Rock Island. If you're planning on buying a CZ or an STI or any other pistol like that, you know, the Rock Island is definitely a good alternative to those. If you're looking to get into the sport and have something that's going to carry you a really long way. Yeah, don't knock it till you try it.
All right. Aaron, how about yourself?
I mean, I would just say that there's no one gun for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't tell you how many people, you know, come up to me with questions or they've been told a certain thing and it's just not necessarily true for them. So try to shoot as many guns as you can. When people, if somebody tells you this is the only way, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
Because there isn't only one way to get there. So come find us at a match. We always have a decent-sized crew with us. I can come up with at least 4 or 5 guns for you to shoot. And most people, in my experience, when they shoot the one, they know it immediately.
Oh, really?
And I'll have 3 or 4 guns laid on a table, and boom, 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 1 or 2 shots. Yeah, I want this one. Like,
oh shit.
Yeah. So even if it's not one of our guns, you know, if you're thinking about moving to a 2011 and you shoot at all, there's a chance you can find somebody at your local club or somewhere that will let you shoot their gun.
Yeah,
we're a friendly bunch, and
one of the things that you've said in the past is like there's no one that's going to spend this much on a pistol and not want to tell you everything about it and let you shoot.
Right, exactly. You find a guy with one of our guns or an Atlas or an SV or any of these guns, they're dying to tell you about it.
Oh,
we
yeah.
know this on Facebook because somebody will say, hey, how about the Astros game last night? And then there's 20 pictures of pistols. This is my pistols. People will call us or email us just to tell us what guns they have. So
grilling tonight.
Yeah.
Here's my gun.
Yeah. So finding
seriously.
somebody that is willing to show you his gun and let you shoot it should not be a problem. So just do that because, you know, if you find a gun that you like and somebody else it's someone so-and-so told me I shouldn't do this, but you find you shoot better with that gun, you know, screw what that guy thinks. You know what will shoot best for you, you know, once you shoot it and find out. And
that's a good point.
Yeah, but come find us. We're at a lot of matches, and we have a lot of guns with us, and we'll let you shoot anything. So there's no replacement for hands-on experience in rounds downrange.
Yeah, especially in the custom gun game. You know, like with when you're buying like a defensive pistol, just needs to go bang.
Right.
You know, and maybe be comfortable carrying it. You know, but with custom pistols for sure, like shoot them, and AR triggers are the same. Loading ports on shotguns are the same.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
I'm sorry?
No, they're not.
They're not?
Loading ports on shotguns are the same?
He means
the same thing. Like you need to
yeah.
try
experience.
You need to experience several different
Yes.
types to figure out what you like is what I'm trying to say.
I got you.
So test drive.
Yeah.
Test
And
drive.
I find that once people shoot our gun, they generally buy one. And I'm sure that's true for most. You know, a guy that wants to buy an SV, he's going to go shoot a couple SVs. He's not going to then not buy an SV.
Yeah.
Because, you know,
Again, they're looking for permission, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, just get your hands on as much as you can and don't be afraid to ask because most gun people are more than willing to share.
I like it. Well, dudes, thank you so much for the time, for walking me and the audience through custom 2011s, what to look for when we were purchasing one. Also, different options that are out there if you're not ready to make the step or the big leap. And thanks.
Yeah.
Always appreciate you guys. Thank you for
Glad to
being
be
a
here.
part of the show.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Cool. Take care.
Hey, before you take off, if you're into this type of content, check out patreon.com/3gunshow. That's Patreon. There you will find bonus podcasts, all kinds of other different benefits of being a supporter of the 3 Gun Show. And you can support yourself for as little as $5 per month. That's patreon.com/3gunshow. Quick reminder that if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Podcast Addict, or wherever you get your podcast content. so you will always get the very latest. Thank you so much for downloading, listening, and subscribing to the show. I'm Dave Hartman, and I'll see you on the range.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.